Senator Dahle, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Craig.
Excellent. So, do me a favor. Tell us real quick, just a little bit about SB 906 and why members of CRA and why Californians and gun owners should be concerned about it.
Well, it's a bill that's actually, I'm going to see it in education because it has to do with reporting your firearms with the schools so that the schools, if they know that you have a firearm and if there's some sort of a threat, they're going to know which parents have firearms and which ones don't and how they're stored and the likes. But I will share with you that we already have those laws on the books. We already have laws that say that they need to be stored in a safe, or they have special locks that need to be put on the firearms in California. So this law, I think, is overreaching. I think it'll be challenged in court, quite frankly. If it gets out of our committee, it was slated for, I think, tomorrow or the next day. And the bill's been pulled right now or set aside. I think that the author might be having some issues with the bill. I'm not sure, but we're not going to hear it in 2 days.
Well, it's interesting because I sit on a school board, and I find it odd that you would be asking, an entity that has a very close relationship, it needs to have a close relationship with families and parents, to basically question them about how they choose to exercise a fundamental right. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, I mean, this legislature is all the time taking away personal freedoms in the guise of safety. Look, I want every child to be safe at school. There's no doubt about that. But I think we need to focus on the people who have firearms in California that we know that are registered felons that have firearms. And there's a program called the APPS program, which there's money in the program that goes to local law enforcement. And the Democrats in this legislature have taken that money and spend it on other things besides giving it to the local county sheriff to go after these felons that we know have illegal firearms. So my goal would be, let's get the illegal firearms out from felons before we start going after parents who are legal citizens or have their firearms legally.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. It's the APPS program is supposed, the whole idea, like you said, is to get firearms out of the hands of people who aren't supposed to be in possession of firearms. And what we've seen, at least in recent times, is that list has either grown, the armed prohibited persons list, or it hasn't gone down, even though we seem to throw more and more and more money at it. There's a number of different pots where money comes from in order to go into that, not just the regular money and APPS money that goes to DOJ, but even, we have this fund called the Firearm Safety Fund, right? That every time you buy a gun, the money's supposed to go into that. That money, none of that money actually goes into anything having to do with firearm safety. But kind of digressing, you're on the education committee. Schools are being asked to do enough. A whole lot of stuff outside of the realm of actual education. And isn't this just one more mandate being placed on local school districts when really what they should be focusing on is reading, writing, and teaching kids to do math?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen through this pandemic that our school children are really suffering. We've seen mental health issues skyrocket in California. And we need to be focused on getting these children their lives. We need to actually have more mental health workers in our schools, and we need to give them the money from California to the local school boards and allow them to spend those resources on what they see fit for their local school districts.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you were to think of or pick a policy that you think would actually work to help make schools safer. Once again, you're on the education committee, and they're talking about making a school safe, protecting schools from, for example, active shooter situations. What would be some ideas that you would propose instead of, say, for example, questioning parents about what guns they own and how they're stored?
Well, look, at the end of the day, parents are always the best choice. We need to give the schools the freedom to be able to run their schools the way they see fit. And quite frankly, what happens in Sacramento is that it's top down. The money is directed to the schools, and it's set in unfunded mandates. So they tell them how they have to do it, but they don't always give them the resources. My proposal would be to allow school boards, give the money straight to the schools and allow them to pick and choose what they need for their local schools. Look, California is a very large state. 27,000 kids last a year left the LA Unified School District. That's a fact. We don't know where they went, and we don't know why they left. But we need to figure out why they left, because our schools are failing our kids. It's not because we don't have great teachers. We have a lot of really great teachers. We have some that quite frankly need to go. But what we really need to do is give the resources to the local counties and the schools themselves, and let the school boards have the power to do what they need to do at the local level.
You know, that's an excellent point. What it takes to keep a school safe in Los Angeles is different than what it would take to keep a school safe in Redding. And letting local policymakers, letting people on the ground, people who know their community, people who know what's going on there, people who know their school sites, letting them make the decisions as to how to best protect children. Because that ultimately, the goal of a school district, of a school, is to provide a safe environment for students to be able to learn. And when you have the state putting this one-size-fits-all draconian program on local school districts, it may fit some places, it may fit others. And unfortunately, the ones that generally tend to be left out in the cold are school districts in communities like yours, tend to be more in more rural communities.
Well, I would say that, look, I always believe in empowering parents. They always make the right decision for their children. And in California, we need to empower parents. And that means that they have to work with the local school boards. Look, we passed some bills last year that I thought were really great bills in education. We passed bills that mandated teachers and the staff to be knowledgeable when they see signs of mental health issues in students. And I think that will really help bridge the gap, because we can then get those kids into treatment and understand what their frustrations are and what's been happening in their lives. And if we do that with parents, I think we'll come a long ways. We passed some really good legislation to do that last year, and I'm super excited to be able to see how that turns out in the future. We don't need to be laying another burden on families with firearms. They're already supposed to be safe at home. We need to just empower parents and school boards and administrators to work with our kids. And when we do see those cases where there's children that have mental health issues, or their depression and the likes, that bullying, those are all things that lead to frustrations where we see violence in our schools. And that's where we need to focus, not on putting another layer of the bureaucracy on the teachers to figure out who has a firearm at home and where it's at.
Excellent, sir. Senator, how can folks follow the work that you're doing, the legislation that you're proposing, or the stuff that you're fighting against? How can they follow you and keep in touch with you?
I have all my social media platforms. Obviously, you can go to briandahle.com. We have a lot of information there about what I've been up to, and all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, those are all things you can follow me on. But you can go to briandahle.com, and there's a lot of information there as well.
Excellent. Senator, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to the folks here at the California Republican Assembly. We appreciate all the hard work that you do. Keep up the fight. Know that we're praying for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I'll keep you in my prayers as well.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Brian Dahle.